brief comment, like 1 minute, and then Dr. Telhami is going to write down and just make his concluding remarks, including answers for this one. And if you allow me, taking the prerogative of the moderator, to start with Safa, because she is one of my graduate students who are one of 4 students of my class and Professor Mary Ashmawi's class in television journalism. They went to Tahrir Square carrying their video cameras in the middle of the revolution, despite all the warning from the US Embassy to get out of Egypt. They braved to go in, 4 of them female reporters, Nirvana is one of them, and they were shooting and documenting part of the revolution. They edited themselves, they are going to write a script and present their stories. I really would like to salute them in the prison of Safa, and go ahead please and ask.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to ask about the polls you have done for the past decades. I read a statement of yours. You said that despite these polls, you were not able to predict these revolutions. So I want to know why. The second question: how do you explain the hesitant American attitude during the days of the revolution? The third one and the last one. What about Libya? Why everyone, including the United States, is just watching in silence and just condemning? That's it. Thank you.
She took care of the 3 other students who didn't come here today to be with us. Please go ahead.
I'll make it short. Thank you, Dr. Telhami. My question is about Libya, because I don't see a good output. Unlike Tunis and Egypt, where we had institutes that could take us into a transition, Libya does not have any institute. And it has one of the most bizarre regimes, and it's a typical state that would end up as a failed state with 1 million barrels a day. So my question is, do you think if Libya collapses, it's another Somalia with oil, the whole tide will turn in the Middle East? We're not going to see any more revolutions.
We're going to finish with this side of the aisle.
If oil prices keep going up because of instability in the region, particularly if it hits the Gulf, will that have an effect on American foreign policy?
Thank you.
Sir, my name is Karim. I'm a student at American University in Cairo. And I would like to know, you talked about America and how Washington is looking at the situation. And I would like to know your opinion about how other powers, as China and Iran, are looking to the situation, and if they're going to be willing to have like more power, more relations with the new regimes in the Middle East. Thank you.
Yes, I'm a long-term American resident in Cairo and former faculty at UC. My name is Cynthia Sheikh al-Islami. I wanted to ask, from your remarks, if I understood them correctly, you seem to assume that the strategic interest of the United States in particular in this region is not going to change, and you're just trying to see how they are going to readapt their relationships with the region to maintain the same strategic interest. I would like to know if that is the correct interpretation. The second thing is that my impression is that from the American side, the opinion that is being represented is the government opinion, and that the opinion of the American people, as expressed in demonstrations of support for the protesters in Egypt, was not transmitted through the American media. I was watching them a lot from here, and I only know that they happened by emails from my friends, not because I saw them reported in the media. So I would like to know, on the American side, what kind of public opinion is influencing the course of events. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move this side.
My name is Nuran Masoud. I'm a political science MA student and recently diplomated the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I have a question about how do you see the future of Egyptian-Israeli relations? I understand that the army already said that we're not going to, and the people themselves, I don't see us launching war against Israel or actually breaking the 1979 peace treaty. But the thing is, what we've seen in the past 30 years, the hands-on, 1000% approval of Israeli foreign policy towards, for example, Gaza massacre and what happened in Lebanon. I don't see this happening, and I don't see this happening in the future. So how do you see this? How do you see the future of Egyptian-Israeli relation, and as well the future of the peace treaty, or like peace in general between Israeli and Palestinian? Seeing that the past couple of days, actually we're going to second week, the Rafah borders have been opened. This has never ever happened before. Thank you.
Aisha, last comment or question. One of the four is finished. One is great.
Thank you. My question is about Frank Wisner, the whole issue of Frank Wisner. I just want to understand, sending him and putting him back and then disagreeing with his conclusion, what was really meant with his all his trip? And was it a mistake, or was it meant to provide variety in the American position, or what?
Good. Well, that's a lot of questions. So let me and they're all good questions. And
I think one exception that someone needs to get if you don't mind. One
Sure.
I'm sorry for that. Sorry.
My name is Olad Falawi, Assistant Lecturer in Public Administration. I just wanted to comment on your opinion that public opinion isn't always the strongest factor. I think in the Egyptian example, we've seen the people actually disarm the regime. We've seen, and we are seeing concessions being given every day. So maybe in this specific context, public opinion will actually be a very strong factor that might take the upper hand, because the military actually has no more cards to play. The regime, the past regime, has done everything that it can do. So maybe it will take the upper hand in the end.
Thank you.
no, good, great. Let me just start quickly with public opinion and predicting. Public opinion, if there was anybody who was close to predicting, it's probably the work we've been doing, because it was identifying a widening gap that could not be sustained. You're saying it can't be sustained, can't be sustained. Now, what that means, of course, we don't know. Meaning, is it going to manifest? How it's going to manifest itself, we don't know. Revolutions are very rare in history. I mean, in the Middle East, we've only had one real revolution that's popular, where the public changed the government. That was Iran in 1979. The 1952 was popular overthrow, but it was the military who generated the change in Egypt. So we don't have a lot of different examples of this, and so it's very hard to predict. And one reason for it is what I suggested earlier, which is we had a theory about what it takes. The theory was, okay, you can have a lot of angry people. Now we know they're angry and they would like to see the government change. That's not enough to create a revolution. They have to find a way to channel their energy into a mechanism to change the government, which is major demonstrations, organization, and so forth. And the prevailing assumption was the only way you can do that is through political organizations or social organizations or leadership. And so what happened here in Egypt and Tunisia really seemed to not need that. It was bypassed. So it's something we are going to think about for a long time. I think it's going to change our theories. I think we're going to have an American university in Cairo is taking the lead with Lisa Anderson, putting together a group of scholars who do Middle East who come in here in the late spring to actually think about all the stuff that's coming out of this. So now the initial reaction to Egypt, to events in Egypt, I assume you meant after Mubarak stepped down. If that's the case, I have to say that there was a sense of relief in Washington, and I can tell you that maybe I interact with the wrong people, but 90% of the people I interacted with on that day said congratulations, because they were basically sort of on the side of what they thought was a legitimate popular revolution. I'm not talking about the official, but even people who were very close to that were there. The Libya reaction is an interesting one. You're right that it has been a bit slower and a little bit less forceful in terms of Gaddafi. It's been strong in condemning the horror and called it, very strong terms. Both the Secretary of State and the President have been very forceful, but they have not called directly for the change of government or to Gaddafi to step down. They have not announced yet any steps that they might be able to announce. Now, there are multiple interpretations of that. One interpretation is there's a reluctance for the U.S. to be part of the story, particularly when you don't seem to have real options. It's really a moral position. But the practical reason appears to be, in part, the fact that there are 5,000 American citizens that have not yet been removed from Libya. And the U.S. tried to remove them early. Bad weather prevented the removal. And so there is some issue pertaining to American laws that I'm not speaking for anybody official on this one, but I know that that's definitely a factor in the mix of the reaction. Now, what would happen if Libya were to turn into anarchy? I think it would have an impact. I have no doubt. I think part of the reason why you can see that even here in the Egyptian context, one of the strategy was to scare people with possible anarchy. It's always a strategy, and I think Iraq, when Saddam Hussein collapsed, I think one of the consequences for the Middle East was to say, look at what's happening in Iraq. Who wants Iraq? And frankly, if you ask me, would you rather be in Iraq or would you rather be in Amman, Jordan? There's no choice. I mean, I'll take Amman, Jordan any day of the week with an autocratic king, rather than take the bloodshed that the Iraqis are going through. So if you have something like that, it does slow it down. And by the way, interestingly, in the public opinion polls, in 2004 and 2005, after the Iraq War, the toppling of the Saddam Hussein regime, and then the intensification of violence, in the public opinion polls we did, there was a rallying around the state in the Middle East. We measured it. I even wrote an article in 2005 or 2006 called "The Return of the State" for those years. So people rallied because they wanted somebody strong. So I think it has an impact, but I don't think it's going to affect the trend. It might affect the method, but I don't think it's going to affect the trend. I think people are just simply not going to, live like the old ways in terms of their voices being ignored. In terms of the oil prices, yeah, of course. I mean, if you look at American foreign policy in the Middle East, oil has been a huge factor in American policy in the Middle East. And the problem is that there is no longer any way you can figure out how the price of oil is going to go, no matter what you do. And part of the American problem is that the old ways of thinking that you need to have presence in the region or you need to have coordination on policy to maintain a certain flow of oil and pricing of oil really are not borne out by the trends over the long haul. You can have episodic change,